Hey, Jason here. In this episode, we're going to talk about how banks are in massive trouble due to this coronavirus stuff. Before I get to that, though, I need to let you know you can get this series or get this video as a podcast anywhere in the world for free on all major podcasting platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, Anchor, and more. You can get this in the I Love Value Investing podcast anywhere in the world for free, so you can get your investing and value investing education anywhere with you on the go for free. Okay, probably we're in July now, mid-July-ish. A couple months ago, March, April timeframe, I did a bunch of Facebook Lives talking about a bunch of things, how the coronavirus was affecting things, and how, if this went on for a long period of time, how, frankly, bad this was going to get economically. Unfortunately, as of this recording, again in mid-July, cases are skyrocketing now in the U.S., in Florida, where I live specifically, and worldwide. Cases are specifically U.S., Brazil, India. Those are the main kind of hotspots worldwide. And in those videos, again, I'll link them below. I talked about a bunch of different topics in depth. The main thing I want to talk about today is banks and how this crisis, what I said back again in March and April, and unfortunately what's happening now. If you watch those videos, I apologize for this kind of recap. I'm going to do it quickly, but it's important for the discussion. So I need to let those who didn't see those videos, I need to let them know, frankly, what's happening, or what I said was going to happen then, and what's happening now with the banks, and why it's massively problematic, frankly, to say the least, for banks. So banks operate on what's called the spread or the float. They can loan money, or they can take money out at, let's say, 0.05%, and they loan it to you at 1%. They make what's called the spread or the float in here. Because of this, most banks are profit margins are very thin, and they use a lot of leverage to magnify that kind of spread to earn a kind of above average return, so they can make more loans, frankly. What happened, or what began happening in March and April, what I said is going to happen, is if people stop paying their bills because of massive job losses, business closures, lockdowns, whatever reason, banks are going to be in massive trouble. And if we get to about the 3-month mark, which again, March, April timeframe, that's about now, we're going to be in massive trouble, because most banks, or most companies worldwide, by my estimation, have about 3 months of cash, or they can go about 3 months max without being paid. Worldwide, things are starting to open up, but mass unemployment in the U.S. and worldwide is at, near, or in some cases even surpassing Great Depression levels. Tens of millions of people in the U.S. are no longer able to pay their bills. This includes, as of the last time I saw, about 4 to 5 million people whose homes are in forbearance because they're not paying, or they can't pay their loans right now. I don't remember the exact number on car loans, but it's the highest delinquency rate, I think, ever, at least certainly in the recent time period, in terms of people paying their loans. The delinquency rate for credit card payments is going higher. There was an article probably about a month ago now that I saw on Market Watch that some crazy number is something like 25-30% of all Americans have zero in their emergency savings account already, because of the, frankly, devastation this has led to on people's economics. The mass closures, the business closures, the lockdowns, mass unemployment, all that. People are going through their emergency funds fast. Car loan companies aren't getting paid. Credit card companies aren't getting paid. Banks aren't getting paid. again, I'm going to go back to the video briefly. Our entire economy is a cycle. If people don't have jobs, so they can't pay their bills, credit card companies, car loan companies, banks aren't going to get paid on mortgages, car loans, credit cards, that kind of stuff. If they're not getting paid, they have less money to loan out, which slows down the business cycle even more. Because if banks aren't loaning money to each other or to individuals like you and I, it makes it harder to almost impossible to get a home loan, to get a business loan, to get a short-term loan on commercial paper to fund your daily business operations. Most businesses, once they get past a certain level, operate on commercial paper. They don't operate on cash. So, for example, most companies, after they get past a certain level, don't pay their employees on the cash that they bring in on a daily basis. They pay them on what's called short-term loans or commercial paper. If that market freezes up because banks aren't getting paid, credit card companies aren't getting paid, auto loan companies aren't getting paid, more businesses will close and go bankrupt because they won't be able to fund their daily operations. That's things like salaries. That's things like purchases for equipment. Is things for like accounts receivable and accounts payable. Commercial paper and short-term debt is how most businesses, again, after a certain size, operate their business on a day-to-day basis. One of the biggest problems we saw in 2007, 2008, during the financial crisis and the Great Recession, was the credit markets completely froze up. And the Federal Reserve had to pump billions, trillions, I don't even remember at this point, how much money they pumped into the system to kind of get banks, to get more money into the system, to get banks to loan and all that kind of stuff. That happened, I think, March, April, when credit markets started to freeze up, and the Federal Reserve in the United States pumped trillions of dollars into the system to keep the markets from crashing, or to keep the markets from completely freezing up, like they did in 2007, 2008. But it worked in the short term. But again, we're now 3-4 months into this, and people are still without jobs. People in mass. I think the numbers are something like 25 or 30 million people are still in the United States on continuing either federal or state unemployment benefits, which means they're not working, they're getting paid by the government, unemployment benefits. This means people still aren't paying their bills, which has been going on for 3-4 months. People's emergency funds are running out. Banks aren't getting paid as much. Card companies aren't getting paid as much. Car loan companies aren't getting paid as much. So the markets are going to start freezing up. To illustrate this point, I said this back in March. This is what's going to happen. March and April. This is what's going to happen if we get to about the stage we're at now. And unfortunately, what I was pulling up here when first came on is this report that I will show you once I can bring it up here. Not options, there we go. Not coming up. Is this report from the S&P. S&P forecasts $2.1 trillion in global bank credit losses over the next 2 years. That's an absurd amount of money. Again, I'm going to bring you back here. I just wanted to show you this headline because it's frankly incomprehensible how horrific that is. To put it kind of in perspective, though, and again, I'll link this article further below so you can read it. But J.P. Morgan, Citibank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo have already begun issuing provisions. I don't know what the exact terminology is off the top of my head, but letting people know, or letting the regulators know through their financial statements, that they are expecting tens of billions of dollars combined in bad loan debt in the next, I think, for the rest of the year, and I think maybe some are going into early first quarter next year. when banks and credit card companies talk about bad debt reserves, that's horrific. The reason that's horrific is because, again, banks operate on small margins, generally. If they see even a minor uptick in defaults and delinquencies, that causes liquidity problems at the bank. That means there's less money out there for loans. That means the credit market tightens up, which leads to more job losses and all that stuff. To put this 2.1 trillion into kind of perspective, if that number happens, there will be economic devastation like we've never seen in the world, frankly. This will affect the entire world. The entire world will be negatively affected by this. And I keep trying to show you the thing, but every time I click on this article, there we go. So I'm going to bring you back to the article. So this is the financial crisis. Loan loss reserves to total loans. See this massive spike over here? This is what we're already at, which is about, right here, is on par to about 2000, late 2009 time period. No, about late 2008 period. We're already to here with Citibank. If we get to 2.1 trillion, frankly, I don't think it'll be even on this chart. Obviously, different banks will have, it will be spread out, but that hopefully, and I'm trying to get back to the article to get you some more specifics, but that it would be horrific, frankly. Ads here. Again, to further illustrate that, we forecast bank credit losses will amount to 2.1 trillion over the next 2 years. That's here. China, in these estimates, is going to get hammered. Why? Because they have an estimated, I think it's between 500 billion and 800 billion in kind of high-risk loans to places like Africa and other developing countries. And those places cannot pay their bills on. So China, in this case, is going to get absolutely hammered. North America is this one, the kind of brownish color. Horrible. The reason this is so bad is not just because of massive losses and the lowering of bank loans and the potential freezing up of the credit markets. This could lead to banks completely going bankrupt, which again would make the financial crisis even worse. If this happens, do I think this is going to happen to this degree? I don't think so, and I certainly hope not, because if it does, it's going to lead to, again, economic devastation like we've never seen before. This will affect pretty much every aspect of our life. I got the question back in March and April. Let me bring you back here again. About, will this affect our daily lives? Will this affect us getting mortgages? Will this affect the housing market? Sorry, I'm losing light here. I tried to turn the light on better. Okay, so I talked about this in March and April about how this is going to lead to massive issues. I got the question back then, is this going to affect like everyday people? Yes, this is going to be bad for governments. Yes, this is going to be bad for companies. This is going to be bad for countries, especially the developing world. how is this going to affect you and I? If the credit markets freeze up and banks lose $2.1 trillion combined over the next 2 years, many banks will go bankrupt. Credit markets will likely freeze up, which will mean more job losses, which will mean more business closures, which will mean higher unemployment than we're already seeing. This, I cannot emphasize how bad this is. I don't know how much banks lost in the 2008 financial crisis worldwide. In the US, it was tens of billions, maybe hundreds of billions tops, low hundreds of billions tops. This is an order of magnitude larger than that. And according to all the books that I've read, all the articles that I read about that time period, those people, Hank Paulson, Tim Geithner, Ben Bernanke, the guys kind of running the U.S. economy at that point, and the Federal Reserves and all that, were worried about the entire economy collapsing because of how much bad debt there was. And again, I don't know the numbers worldwide, but in the U.S., low hundreds of billions tops. Maybe 500 billion. Let's go 500 billion. Let's be not optimistic. Let's be kind of on the high side in the U.S. $500 billion. Bad bank loans, bad debt, toxic debt, whatever you want to call it. We're talking about $2.1 trillion here. So 4 times higher than that. This, again, I don't know how to emphasize it other than that. But if this happens, if the numbers frankly even close to that, economic devastation that we've never seen in frankly the history of the modern world. I talked about this in March. I said this is what's going to happen if we get to about the 3-4 month time period. We're there now. And unfortunately, we're seeing the coronavirus still hasn't gone away. It's actually accelerating. And we are still not even close to kind of back to normal economically. If we go another, let's say it's mid-July now, if we get to October, so another 3 months, it'll be about 5, 6, 7 months, depending on where you're watching this from at that point and where you kind of went on lockdown, where mass job losses began happening. 5, 6 months. If we get to that point and we're still kind of not quote unquote back to normal, economic devastation is what we're looking at. For countries, for governments, for corporations, for frankly you and I. I don't know, frankly, what else to say about it. Hopefully this gets the point across that this is serious. Back in March and April, most politicians, government officials, scientists said this is going to be over in a short time period. I didn't buy that. I still don't. Unfortunately, viruses just don't go away. And we are going to have to figure out something. I don't know what the answer is, but we're going to have to figure out something to kind of get back to normal economic levels, where there's going to be just, again, economic devastation the modern world has never seen. The best thing at the end of every one of those videos in March and April, I said 2 things. I recommend 2 things. Because if you're watching this, your friend, family member, value investing family member, value investing journey family member, some kind of person that I care about. So, and nobody is really talking about this. Again, I saw that on Zero Hedge and Market Watch. I don't watch mainstream media because they don't talk about this kind of stuff, which is super important. All they talk about is the stupid politics and which crisis is this week's big issue and who's fighting with who, and they don't talk about the important issues like this, which frankly this is an enormously, potentially even more important than the coronavirus. Um, because while the case rate is skyrocketing, the death rate is not yet. I don't know if that's going to go up. I'm not a scientist, but as at this time, new cases are skyrocketing. The death rate is still kind of just even, about on par with what it was in, I think, April, May was the worst time period. It's about on par with that. So I don't know what all the answers are, but we need to figure out something soon, or this is going to be horrific economically. At the end of all my videos in March and April, I said there's two things you can do: raise cash and stay healthy. Raise cash, sell stuff if you need to on eBay, take on consulting work, start an online business, figure out some way to make money and make more money and save as much of it as you can. To prepare, frankly, I'm not saying hoard all your cash and put it under your mattress like they did back in the 20s and the 30s during the Great Depression. I'm not saying that, but if you have cash, it gives you options. If you have cash, you can keep ahead of your bills. You can keep ahead of getting further into debt. If you have cash, when this turns around, which it will, I just don't know when. I don't know if it's going to be next month. I don't know if it's going to be 2 weeks from now. I don't know if it's going to be 2 years from now. I have no idea. But the more cash you have kind of built up, the longer you can survive and then thrive and invest well when this is over. Because the market is frankly insane right now too, which is another story for a different day. But raise cash, stay healthy, because if you stay healthy, you not only can feel good and make money yourself, but you're not sick, you're not feeling like crap, and you're not getting your family members sick. And it gives you the ability to raise more cash. So again, I hope this helps. I hope if you have any questions, reach out to me on Facebook, on Twitter, on my email, jasonrivera@valueinvestingjourney.com, jasonrivera@valueinvestingjourney.com. I'd love to answer any questions you have about this. And frankly, like I said in all those videos, I hate talking about stuff like this. I'm a happy, optimistic person 99% of the time, but I feel like I have to tell you this because nobody else is telling you guys this. And I said this stuff again back in March and April. This is what's going to happen, and unfortunately it is. And this is what I kind of foresee in the next 3 to 6 months. If we don't fix something soon in terms of the economics, it's going to be devastating. And I want to hopefully prepare you a little bit for that. Again, I hope it doesn't happen, but at this point, I don't know. I just don't know how things are going to get fixed without massive bankruptcies, without massive banking issues, without massive credit issues, without massive personal issues for you and I, business closures, all that kind of stuff. I just don't understand how that's going to happen with the coronavirus cases just absolutely skyrocketing right now. But we're going to have to figure something out. I'd love to hear your comments on this. Love to hear your questions on this. Again, if you want to reach out to me, if you have any personal finance questions, retirement questions, stock market questions, investing questions, anything like that, I'd love to help you out in any way I can or point you in the right direction if I can't help you. Remember to listen to this, or if you're watching this on YouTube, to like, love, share, subscribe, comment, and hit the notification bell so you're notified every time we release a new video, and I release new videos all the time. If you're listening on the podcast, like, love, share, subscribe, download, and we love a review as well. The more reviews we get, the higher we rank, and the more reviews we get, the more people we can help. Or the higher we rank, the more people we can help with our content as well. So again, I'd love to hear your comments, questions, concerns about this. But until next time, have a great day. Talk soon.